I knew the exact moment the company was doomed. It was not when the stock dipped, and it was not when they replaced the breakroom coffee with some organic sludge that tasted like distilled disappointment. It was the moment Bradley Cross walked in. Bradley was the new chief technology officer, a 28-year-old experiment wrapped in a fitted vest and unearned confidence. He entered like Moses parting the Red Sea, except the sea was just tired engineers praying for severance. I was sitting in the corner nursing a styrofoam cup of lukewarm bean water, watching him survey the room. I had been here 6 years. In technology years, that makes me a prehistoric fossil. I am the ghost in the machine, the reason the servers do not catch fire when Black Friday traffic hits. But to Bradley, I was just a man in a faded hoodie who looked like he needed a long nap. If you enjoy watching arrogant corporate guys get dismantled by the people they underestimate, hit that upvote button. It fuels my rage and helps me buy more calming herbal tea, which I definitely lace with whiskey. Thanks, listen up, team. Bradley started, clapping his hands together like a seal asking for a fish. I have been reviewing the architecture, and honestly, it is a mess. It is legacy garbage. We are pivoting to a microservices first, artificial intelligence-driven ecosystem by Q3. He threw a slide up on the projector. It was a bunch of meaningless circles and arrows that looked like a football play drawn by a toddler on stimulants. He was proposing deleting the central logic gate of our entire logistics platform. That legacy garbage was quantum ops. That was my baby. That was the code I wrote during the logistics nightmare of 2020, fueled by panic and insomnia, which literally saved this company from bankruptcy when the rest of the world's supply chains were collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. "Excuse me," I said, my voice raspy. I had not spoken in a meeting in 3 months. That garbage handles 90% of our vendor compliance. You delete that node, and you are not just pivoting, you are lobotomizing the company. Bradley turned to me. He had that smile, the one that does not reach the eyes, the one practiced in a mirror while listening to hustle culture podcasts. He looked at my messy hair, my faded crew t-shirt, and then checked his watch. "And you are?" he asked, feigning ignorance. He knew who I was. It was the line item on the budget that the chief financial officer could not explain, but refused to cut. "I am Roger," I said, keeping it simple. "Roger Vance. I built the backbone you are trying to surgically remove." Bradley chuckled. It was a wet, condescending sound. "Right, Roger. Look, Pops, I appreciate what you did in the old days, but we are not running a history museum here. We are building the future. And frankly, your monolithic code is holding us hostage. We need agility. We need velocity. We do not need whatever this patchwork is, Pops." The word hung in the air like a bad smell. The other engineers looked down at their laptops, terrified. They knew I was not just the architect. They knew I was not even technically an employee. But Bradley was too busy admiring his own reflection in the glass whiteboard to do his due diligence. See, back in 2018, when this company, Orion Freightway, was nothing but a chaotic startup, with 3 lawsuits and a dream they could not afford me. I was a mercenary developer with a rate that made executives weep. So my lawyer, a shark named Gordon Finch, who operates out of a strip mall next to a vape shop, came up with a different arrangement. I did not sign an employment contract. I signed a licensing agreement. I incorporated my own limited liability company, Ironclad Logic, and I licensed the Quantum Ops platform to them. Think of it like a software rental. You do not buy the software, you buy the right to use it. And like any landlord renting out a penthouse, I kept a key. Bradley did not know that. Bradley saw a 55-year-old man with dark circles under his eyes and assumed I was a legacy hire, some ancient developer from a bygone era. He thought he was firing a rusted cog. He did not realize he was trying to evict the landlord while still living in the house. "Okay, Bradley," I said, leaning back in my chair, the plastic creaking under the weight of my exhaustion. "You are the boss. Agility, velocity, got it. Glad we are on the same page." He smirked, turning his back to me to point at his nonsense diagram again. "We are going to start sunsetting the old modules effective immediately. Human resources will be doing some restructuring to align with the new vision, restructuring. Corporate speak for firing the people who actually know how the lights work." I did not argue. I did not throw my coffee at him, even though the urge was strong enough to make my hand twitch. I just sat there watching him pontificate about synergies and bandwidth. My heart was not even racing. That is the scary part. When you have been in the trenches this long, you do not panic when the rookie pulls the pin on the grenade. You just check your watch and calculate the blast radius. I looked at the date on my phone. My licensing contract renewed automatically every quarter unless contested. The next payment was due in 4 days. Paragraph 4 of my contract was very specific about what happens if the licensee attempts to modify, reverse engineer, or disparage the integrity of the provided software. And Paragraph 6 was the nuclear option. The freeze-out started subtle, like black mold in a bathroom wall. First, it was the calendar invites. The weekly architecture synchronization dropped off my email. Then, the strategy alignment meetings. I was sitting in my cubicle, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter coming from the glass-walled conference room 10 feet away. Bradley was in there holding court. Through the glass, I saw him pointing at a whiteboard that I used to own. He was erasing my diagrams, complex functional flowcharts of database logic, and replacing them with buzzwords like holistic synergy and cloud-native mindset. It is funny how fast you become invisible. 6 years of 80-hour weeks, 6 years of waking up at 3 in the morning to patch a server leak so the chief executive officer, Lawrence Gable, could buy his third boat, and suddenly I was a ghost. People I had shared lunch with for years started avoiding eye contact in the hallway. They smelled death on me. In corporate offices, getting fired is contagious. If you stand too close to the victim, management might decide you are part of the disease. Then came Justin Webb, the new product evangelist. Bradley introduced him on Tuesday. Team, meet Justin, our new product evangelist. He is going to be spearheading the transition to the new stack. Justin looked like he was 22. He was wearing pristine, white sneakers that had never touched a dirty server floor. He came over to my desk holding a matcha latte, looking like a puppy who just did something wrong but thinks he is a good boy. "Hey, Roger, right?" Justin said, beaming. "Bradley told me you are the legacy historian. I would love to pick your brain about the old code before we deprecate it." Historian. Deprecate. I swiveled my chair around slowly. "Justin, do you know what a load balancer is?" He blinked. "Well, yeah, concept-wise. We use cloud services for that, right? It is all serverless now, right?" I said, turning back to my screens. Serverless because the cloud is just magic sky pixie dust, not actual hardware running in a warehouse in Virginia that melts if you do not optimize your database queries. "Good luck, Justin." He wandered off, looking confused. I almost felt bad for him, almost. He was walking into a minefield with a map drawn by a narcissist. By Thursday, my access to the staging environment was revoked. I got a generic system email, permissions updated by Administrator Bradley Cross. I did not fight it. I did not storm into Bradley's office demanding answers. I simply opened my personal laptop, my trusty machine that held the keys to the kingdom, and checked the bank account for ironclad logic. It was the first of the month. The quarterly licensing fee for the QuantumOps core platform was due at midnight. Usually, the old chief financial officer, Henry Cole, who actually understood how contracts worked, had it on automatic payment. But Henry Cole had been restructured last month too. I refreshed the page. No pending transactions. I refreshed it again an hour later. Nothing. I sat there, the blue light of the monitor reflecting in my glasses, feeling a strange mix of adrenaline and calm. It was happening. They were ghosting the payment. In their arrogance, they assumed that since I was sitting in a cubicle collecting a salary, which was actually a retainer fee disguised as payroll, for tax simplicity on their end, they did not need to pay the vendor invoice. They thought they owned me. Therefore, they thought they owned the code. I pulled up the contract. I keep a digital copy, but I also have the original signed in wet ink by the founder, safe in a fireproof box at home. Clause 3.1, Payment Obligations. Failure to remit licensing fees within 24 hours of the due date constitutes a material breach. Clause 3.2, Cure Period. There is no cure period for willful non-payment or unauthorized modification of the source material. Bradley had already violated the unauthorized modification clause by trying to patch his new microservices on top of my core without my keys, and now he was about to violate the payment clause. I could have walked into his office. I could have warned him. I could have said, "Hey, Slick, you are about to default on the software that runs your entire inventory system." But then I remembered his laugh, and I remembered Pops. I let the clock tick. At 4 in the afternoon on Friday, Human Resources sent me a calendar invite for 4:30, subject, quick synchronization. Location, meeting room B. This was it, Friday firing. The classic move. Do it at the end of the day so the employee cannot cause a scene, and the rest of the staff has the weekend to forget they existed. I started packing. Not much, just a few photos, my lucky screwdriver set, and a succulent that was clinging to life despite the office air. I wiped my company-issued laptop. I did not just delete files, I ran a military-grade scrubber on the drive. I checked the bank account one last time. Still zero. I stood up, put on my jacket, and grabbed the folder I had brought from home. Inside was the contract, heavily highlighted. It was time to go to the meeting. Meeting room B was a glass fishbowl near the elevators. Bradley was there, of course, looking like he was posing for a business magazine. Sitting at the table was Evelyn Miller from Human Resources. Evelyn was a nice lady who communicated exclusively in sad smiles and pamphlets about insurance. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. "Have a seat, Roger," Evelyn said, her voice soft. I sat. I placed my folder on the table. Bradley eyed it suspiciously, then smirked. "We have been evaluating the team structure," Bradley started, not letting Evelyn do her job. "As we move toward this high-velocity future, we are finding that your skill set does not align with the trajectory of quantum ops." "Trajectory," I repeated, nodding slowly. Like a missile into a mountain. Bradley's jaw tightened. "We are terminating your employment effective immediately. Evelyn has the paperwork. Standard severance, 2 weeks of pay. We will need your badge and laptop." Evelyn slid a stack of papers across the table. "We also require you to sign this non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement to receive the severance," she added. I did not touch the papers. I looked at Bradley. "Just to be clear," I said, my voice steady, "you are terminating our relationship completely. That is what fired means, Pops." Bradley snapped. "Just sign the papers, Roger, and make this easy." I reached into my pocket, pulled out my badge, and slid it across the table. Then I took the laptop out of my bag and placed it next to the badge. "I am no longer an employee," I said. "Good," Bradley said. "Security will escort you out." "Wait," I said, placing my hand on the folder. "We are done with the employment part. Now we need to discuss the vendor relationship," Bradley frowned. "What does that mean?" I opened the folder. Inside was the licensing agreement for the Quantum Ops Core platform, signed in 2018, renewed automatically every quarter. I spun it around. "I do not work for you, Bradley. I never really did. My company, Ironclad Logic, licenses the technology that runs your procurement, your logistics, and your vendor payments. I was just part of the package. On-site support included in the premium tier." Bradley laughed. He actually laughed. He picked up the contract, glanced at the cover page, and tossed it back down. "This is some old paperwork from the startup days. We own everything you wrote while you were here. Intellectual property assignment. It is standard. We own the code." "Actually," I said, tapping paragraph 4. "Read it. All code, architecture, and algorithms remain the sole property of the licensor, Ironclad Logic. The licensee, Orion Freightway, is granted a non-exclusive, revocable right to use the software, contingent upon timely payment and adherence to usage guidelines." I watched his eyes scan the paragraph. I saw the moment the words hit his retinas, but his brain refused to process them. It was too absurd for him. In his world, developers were cogs. Companies owned everything. "This is nonsense," he spat. "You are on payroll. That voids this. Consult your lawyers." I was on a retainer contractor structure for 2 years before moving to W-2 payroll for administrative convenience per a specific addendum, but the intellectual property rights never transferred. Ironclad Logic still holds the copyright registration under Title 17 in the United States Code, Section 106. Exclusive rights to reproduce and distribute copies belong solely to the copyright holder. You have no assignment agreement, only a license. I stood up. "Here is the situation, Bradley. You just terminated the on-site support. That is fine. I was tired of the coffee anyway. But you also missed the quarterly licensing payment. That is a material breach. I am not paying you a dime," Bradley hissed, his face turning a shade of red that clashed with his vest. "Get out before I call security." "Okay," I said. I walked to the door. I paused and looked back at Evelyn, whose mouth was hanging open. "Evelyn, you might want to print out hard copies of the payroll data. Just a friendly tip." I looked at Bradley one last time. Clause 6, Bradley. Look it up. Unauthorized use of the software following a breach of contract will result in immediate suspension of service. You have 72 hours to cure the breach. But since you just fired the only person who knows how to keep the engine running, I would say you have less than that. Get out, he yelled. I walked out. I did not look back. I walked past my old desk, past Justin, who was aggressively typing nothing. I walked out into the parking lot. The air was thick and humid. I got in my truck, a beat-up Ford, and tossed the folder on the passenger seat. They thought they fired an employee. They just evicted their landlord, and they did not even have a spare key. I drove to the liquor store, bought a bottle of cheap whiskey, and headed home. It tasted like bad decisions, which felt appropriate. Back at my apartment, I set up my command center. I was not going to hack them. I had no need to do so. Hacking is illegal. What I was doing was strictly administrative enforcement of a binding contract. I opened my laptop and logged into the ironclad Logic Remote admin panel. It communicated with the Orion Freightway servers via a heartbeat signal. Every hour, their server pinged mine to ask if it was still allowed to exist. And for 6 years, my server replied, yes, carry on. I poured a glass of whiskey, no ice. I took a sip and shuddered. On my screen, the status lights were all green. Inventory module active, vendor API active, payroll gateway active. I navigated to the license status tab. Current status, grace period. Grace period ends, 48 hours. Bradley had called my bluff. He thought I was just a bitter old man waving paper around. He did not understand that the code I wrote was paranoid. I wrote it that way because I knew people like him existed. The software verified its license against the server. I changed the setting from grace period to strict enforcement. Then I queued up a command, revoke license key 001. I did not hit enter yet. I wanted to give them the weekend, let them enjoy their brunch. Let Bradley brag to his friends about how he trimmed the fat at the office. The system was designed to do a hard check at 8 in the morning on Monday when the transaction volume spiked. I sat back and opened my computer to watch some old movies. There is something soothing about watching stories where justice is simple. My phone buzzed. It was Peter Dunn, the junior developer. A text. Bradley is popping champagne. He says he is going to use your salary to buy a ping pong table. I hate it here. I chuckled and typed back. Do not sign any long-term leases, kid. Maybe call in sick on Monday. I spent the weekend doing things I had not done in years. I slept in past 6 in the morning. I went to a diner and ate eggs that were dripping in grease. I did not check my email. I did not answer the frantic automated alerts that started pinging my phone around Sunday noon, when the system started noticing the license server was unreachable. Sunday night, the whiskey bottle was half empty and my resolve was full. I looked at the clock. Monday, 7:55 in the morning. The Orion Freightway offices would be waking up. The warehouse teams in Nevada and Utah would be logging in to process the weekend orders. The automated procurement bots would be attempting to order $2 million worth of raw materials. I hovered my mouse over the revoke button. This was not revenge. Revenge is emotional. This was business. This was a landlord changing the locks on a tenant who trashed the place and refused to pay rent. Paragraph 4, I whispered to the empty room. I hit enter. On the screen, the status lights flickered. Inventory module unlicensed. Vendor API access denied. Payroll gateway critical failure. The cascading red text was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It was poetry. It was the visual representation of consequences. I took a sip of whiskey. It went down smooth this time. The silence on my phone did not last long. At 8:03 in the morning, the first text came in. It was not from Bradley. It was from the automated notification system that I had forgotten to mute. Alert, critical outage, main database unresponsive, error code 42, payment required. This was a custom HTTP status code I had repurposed specifically for this moment. It literally means payment required. I wondered if anyone in that building was smart enough to look it up. At 8:15, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. Then again. I imagined the scene. The warehouse floor in Nevada, grinding to a halt because the scanners could not authenticate the inventory. Trucks lining up at the loading docks. Drivers screaming because the digital manifests were blank. The customer service lines lighting up like a Christmas tree as thousands of orders failed to process. At 8:30, Peter Dunn texted me. Roger, everything is down. Everything. The dashboard just says, please contact administrator. Bradley is screaming at the servers. He literally kicked a rack. I smiled, eating a piece of cold toast, kicking the hardware, the universal sign of a man who has no idea how software works. At 9, the phone rang again. This time the caller ID said Orion Freightway headquarters. I picked up, put it on speaker and set it on the table while I watered my succulent. Hello, I answered, my voice groggy, feigning sleep. Roger, this is Bradley. His voice was an octave higher than usual. It sounded tight, like he was being strangled by his own vest. Who is this? I asked. Bradley, the chief technology officer. Look, we have a situation. The system is down. All of it. We think it is a logic bomb. Did you leave something running? I do not work there anymore, Bradley, I said, spraying the plant. I returned my laptop. I have no access. Do not give me that, he shouted. I could hear panic in the background. Phones ringing, people yelling, the error message. It says, license invalid. What did you do? Oh, I said, acting as if I just realized the license. Yeah, I told you about that on Friday. Did you pay the invoice? The invoice? I told you we are not paying that. It is extortion. It is a contract, Bradley, and since you did not pay, and since you fired the on-site administrator, the software has reverted to its default state, which is off. Turn it back on, he demanded. Right now, or I will sue you into the ground. I will ruin you, Bradley, I said, my voice dropping to that cold steel tone. You are currently using unauthorized intellectual property. My lawyer is drafting a cease and desist letter as we speak. Under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 504, willful copyright infringement carries statutory damages of up to $150,000 per violation. Furthermore, if you attempt to bypass the license lock, that is a violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. That is a federal crime. Do you look good in orange jumpsuits? It might clash with your vest. There was silence. Then a muffled voice in the background. It sounded like their legal counsel. I heard the words, he is right, and liability. Just fix it, Bradley pleaded, his bluster evaporating. We are losing $10,000 a minute. I do not do charity work for companies that fire me, I said. Put Lawrence Gable on the phone. He is in a board meeting. Bradley stammered. Then drag him out, I replied. In 10 minutes, the automatic vendor payments fail. Your supply chain will be dead by lunch. I heard running footsteps. A moment later, Lawrence, the chief executive officer, was on the line, his voice shaking. Roger, what is going on? I believe your new chief technology officer evicted the landlord, Lawrence. And now you are locked out of the house. Lawrence tried to play the family card, offering a massive raise if I would come back and turn the servers on. I do not want a job, Lawrence, I said. That bridge is ashes. Then what is this? Blackmail? It is a vendor dispute, I corrected. You possess proprietary software without paying the required fees. Since you terminated the support contract, I am exercising my right to terminate the license. You have two options. Option A, you migrate to a new system. Let Bradley build it. It took me 6 years. Option B, you purchase a one-time perpetual license for the source code, meaning you buy the intellectual property of Ironclad Logic. You own it. I walk away, fine, Lawrence said instantly. We will buy it. How much? $2,600,000, I said. That is insane, Lawrence roared. That is extortion. That is the valuation, I said. It is exactly 1% of the revenue my code saved you during the pandemic logistics crisis, plus a nuisance fee for having to listen to Bradley call me Pops. I will not pay it. Okay, good luck with the migration. Oh, and Lawrence, the Data Vault compliance purge initiates in 1 hour. If the license is not renewed, the system automatically purges customer data to comply with privacy laws. You know, the General Data Protection Regulations. We would not want to keep user data on an unlicensed system. That would be illegal. I was mostly bluffing about the purge, but they did not know that. You have 59 minutes, I said. I will send the agreement to your personal email. I assume your corporate email is down. I hung up. My phone buzzed with frantic texts from Peter. He was live blogging the panic from the server room. The general counsel was screaming at Bradley after finding the contract. Lawrence was threatening to call the authorities, and Bradley was in tears after learning they had legally breached first. I watched the clock. 10:45. 15 minutes until the compliance purge. My phone rang. It was the general counsel, Diana Ross Roger. Diana said. We have reviewed the documentation. Hi, Diana. Did you catch paragraph 4? I did, and paragraph 6. It is airtight. I see you have a good lawyer. I do. Lawrence is ready to sign, but we need an assurance that the system comes back online immediately. The second the wire hits my account, I push a patch that updates the license key to perpetual. Sending the wire now, Diana said. I refreshed my banking application. Pending transaction, plus $2,600,000. Source: Orion Freightway. It is there, I said. Ulkit, Roger. Pleasure doing business with you, Diana. I hung up, opened my terminal, and ran the command to update the license status to perpetual. 2 minutes later, Peter texted, "We are green. Systems are booting." I did not cheer. I felt a sudden crushing exhaustion. The adrenaline dump was over. I had won. I had secured my retirement. 2 weeks later, I sat in the lobby of Apex Logistics, their biggest competitor. The director of engineering, Stan Bowman, greeted me warmly. He had heard about the contract enforcement and wanted me to rebuild their vendor compliance system. While I could not share Orion's code, I offered to design a far superior high-concurrency architecture written in a modern language. All I needed was 6 months, a small team, and total autonomy. Stan agreed instantly, offering a premium consulting fee and equity. I walked out with a contract that made the $2,600,000 look like a beginning. Orion Freightway owned the code, but they paid millions for a basic engine. I was about to build a rocket for the guys across the street. Later, trade journals announced that Bradley had been demoted to special projects, corporate speak for being banished to the basement. 6 months later, Apex launched our new platform. It completely dominated the market, causing Orion's stock to plummet 40% in the first quarter. They were stuck maintaining a legacy system they barely understood, while Bradley eventually quit to speculate in digital currency. Now, I sit in my newly renovated home. The framed contract hangs in my office, highlighting the paragraph that bought this house. Sometimes I monitor the massive data traffic flowing through Apex's systems, thinking of all the invisible engineers who keep the lights on while managers take the credit. So, the next time a young executive in a fleece vest calls you pops or dismisses your code as legacy garbage, do not scream. Just make sure you own the keys and charge them for the matches.